Hello, and ahead of the FIFA Men's International window for the final time for this calendar year, we had Matchday for the 2025-2026 UEFA Champions League phase to look back at. And this was the one where we saw, I would say, mass surprises of results in my opinions compared to my predictions. I did see a mixture of results throughout Matchday 4, and I even switched it up to which matches I was watching in real time. But anyways, as per usual, we'll review all 18 matches and then we'll look at the current table, and then after that, we'll see how my predictions did line up. I've already hinted to you about how we saw some surprises, and you'll see how this has wrecked my predictions so far. Anyways, we got a lot of matches to cover, so let's get into it before we get into the fun stuff. The concerns are definitely growing for Napoli as they failed to pick up an ideal result against Eintracht Frankfurt, and to start this match, they didn't start off well either as Eintracht Frankfurt. They ended up getting a shot on target and were showing the pressure early. But then Napoli, we'd see them turn on the heat, and then Holland and McTominay, they would have shots of their own, and they kept firing away, but they couldn't find the back of the net. And this was a physical contest, and Napoli did look like the better side. But we go into halftime 0-0, and Eintracht Frankfurt, they once again came out of the half whenever the kickoff was pretty strong and trying to break this deadlock within the first 5 minutes of the second half, but their efforts just weren't enough. Shots were going in favor of Eintracht Frankfurt, but once again, nothing's in the net. And about the half hour mark, or more of like the full hour mark, things began shifting in favor of Napoli. At about the hour mark, this is where things began shifting in Napoli's favor, and they began pressing, but their shots were just slightly missing. Eintracht Frankfurt, they ended up having a chance later on, but their chance got saved, and this match went back and forth with shots just barely missing, and it came down to the final minute where Napoli had the chance to win it, and they had a shot that led to a corner, but minus all that late pressure, it ends on a scoreless draw. This was the match I ended up keeping up with in real time. I thought this was better than the previous match I just mentioned. Arsenal looked as the better side, but Slavia Praha, they were not a sleeper in this match, and we saw both sides sneak in shots extremely early. Arsenal, they would look better for sure, but it definitely was a competitive match. Arsenal ends up getting their first big chance to suck it, but it remains 0-0. And halfway into the half is when Arsenal looked more dominant, and it felt like a goal was coming. The pressure was on, and a shot would go out for a corner, and this is where VAR after that corner got involved. It was an odd handball, but it was definitely a PK, and Misaka scored on the PK. And the pressure would live on, even though Arsenal did have 3 yellow cards at this point, but they're only up 1-0 at the half. It didn't take long after a minute that Arsenal did make it 2-0 with Marino getting a goal early on, and it was a note that the Ultras in all black, they were in all black for the first half, and the second half they were all shirtless. Just thought I'd put that in there real quick. But anyways, Arsenal kept the pressure, but Slavia Praha, they got more involved. And however, in the 68th minute, Marino, he has his second goal for Arsenal in the box, and it's 3-0. And the yellow cards were flying, and then VAR intervened for a potential Slavia Prague PK, which would end Arsenal's streak of not conceding a goal. But it's not a PK, and they pushed hard for a consolation goal past the 90, but they are shut out by Arsenal 3-0. Believe it or not, I did not watch this contest until later on when Promise David made his appearance. Atletico Madrid, they had better quality obviously, but USG, they did show their offensive ability, and USG, they did have better chances early on, but it was Julian Alvarez about halfway into the half with his first shot on target, but it's kept out. And this match appeared even, but you zoom up to the 38th minute, and you have Alvarez that gets to go for Atletico Madrid to go up 1-0. Atletico Madrid, they pushed for 2. It appeared Griezmann had a goal, but VAR ruled it out. So they settled for 1 ultimately at the half. And they kept pushing in the second half for goals and forcing corners. And about the hour mark, I put eyes on this match, and this is where we see tactical substitutes for both sides, including Promise David, entered for USG. VAR intervened again for potential Atletico Madrid PK, but they don't see enough. And Promise David, he had a chance to tie it, but he missed. And then later on, it's Conor Gallagher off the bench to make it 2-0. In USG, they made changes, they pushed for a goal, and surely they ended up getting that goal actually. And they're only down by 1, and they kept pushing. And USG could have had this tied, but this shot that they had was out for a corner. And Atletico Madrid, they put Llorente in late, and they got a couple of chances. He ends up getting the second one, and he gets another goal in this year's tournament, his third. In USG, they do not quit after the 90 with lots of time added, but they can't add a second goal, and they lose 3-1. Out in England, we got Liverpool hosting Real Madrid. And it started off quiet, but after 15 minutes, Real Madrid, they started sustaining pressure, and their second chance, it's out for a corner. And 10 minutes later, Liverpool has their first shot on target, but the Hungarian international has his shot saved for Courtois. In this match, it turned up a notch with back and forth chances, and Szoboszlai, he continued to be the best Liverpool player on the pitch, forcing dangerous chances. Afterwards, VAR did intervene for a potential Liverpool PK, but none was rewarded. And afterwards, it's once again Szoboszlai with another opportunity on goal, but it's still 0-0. If you thought he was done, he had his fourth chance, but Courtois made another save. And going the other way, Jude Bellingham, he has a shot on target for Real Madrid, but his chance is saved, and it's 0-0 at the half. In Liverpool, they came out of this second half strong, and we see a header on frame, but no goals still. And once again, the Hungarian has his fifth shot directly at goal, but he just can't score. But in the 63rd minute, he doesn't score, but he does assist on the goal to Alexis McAllister, and Liverpool are with the lead. And Real Madrid, they got more involved, and Mbappe had a shot later on, but Real Madrid, they remained down 1-0. And we see substitutes, and it felt like Real Madrid was better off with those changes. And Liverpool, they looked to put this away, but Cody Gakpo, he just can't extend the lead. And Real Madrid, they have the ball late, but that was all she wrote, and Liverpool wins. Copenhagen, it felt like they got worse and worse in this match, low-key. But anyways, Tottenham, they started off strong, but it's Copenhagen with the first shot on frame about 5 minutes in. And however, Tottenham, they kept pressing. In the 19th, we see Brendan Johnson get the first goal of the match, and it's a great goal. And they kept pressing, but a chance sees Copenhagen almost have this tied, but Tottenham, they're hanging on, and they're absorbing the pressure when they are pressured. And Tottenham, they started pressing late with 5 minutes to go in the half, but it remains 1-0. And going into the second half, it's fairly calm, but Tottenham extends the lead to make it 2-0 in the 51st. In Copenhagen, they weren't done, and they had a big chance afterwards, and their pressure did lead to a red card reviewed by VAR, and Tottenham would go down a man as Johnson's night was over. But sure enough, the Magic 10 would play its role, and it's Mickey van de Ven who goes all the way to score, and for some reason, we had Copenhagen players jogging on that play. And a few minutes later, in the 67th minute, Tottenham ends up scoring again. It's Paulina, and it's 4-0. And then Koulibaly, he ends up creating lots of chances, but he can't get it to 5-0. And we see tactical changes from both sides. In Copenhagen, started looking for a late goal, and into the 90, Tottenham looked for one last goal, and they indeed win a PK. It's for Carlson at the spot, but he ends up hitting the crossbar, and it does not go in the net, so it ends 4-0 for Tottenham. A solid win. What an odd result for both these sides. Anyways, PSV, they looked for another big one after their last match with Joey Veerman putting the pressure on early. Later on, Olympiacos, they had their first shot on target in the 4th minute, and they showed a lot of pressure. PSV then appeared to have the first goal, but VAR ruled it out ultimately. And after the review, it's Olympiacos who actually has the first goal from Gelson Martins. And Coutinho, who looked sharp alongside Martins, they had chances, and they just couldn't make it 2-0. And PSV showed they wanted to tie it, and Coutinho, he had a couple of chances more, but they both go out for corners. And Olympiacos, they kept shooting, but PSV's defenders kept blocking shots. And minus all the pressure, the Greek side is only up 1-0 at halftime. And out of the half, PSV looked to equalize, but Olympiacos, they continued to look better. And about 20 minutes to go, PSV, they started taking over this match, and they finally get a shot on frame, but it's still 1-0. And Veerman, he continued to have a solid match, and his shot goes out for a corner kick. And Martins, he had a couple more chances to extend the lead, but in the final minute, PSV has suddenly scored, and it's the American international Ricardo Pepi after they pressed late, and it felt like a sudden shock, and this match ended up a draw. And it's another unfortunate result for Olympiacos. I only saw past the 90 in real time, but not another great match for another Italian side, and that's Juventus. Sporting appeared better early on, but Dusan Vlahovic, he ends up having the first shot for Juventus, and we wouldn't see much, but Sporting, they end up getting a shot, and surely enough, they're up 1-0. So Juventus ends up looking for an answer, and Weston McKennie, he has a shot deflected, and they kept pressing, and sure enough, it's Vlahovic, and he scores, and it's a tied match, and Sporting put on the pressure, and Juventus matched it late, but it's 1-1 at the half. And out of the half, Juventus looked better than Vlahovic. He puts another shot on target, but it's still 1-1. And Thuram, who has to assist, had a chance of his own, but it's not enough. And mine is looking fairly one-sided. Sporting had a big chance, but it's still tied. And Thuram has another shot on frame, but as mentioned, we're still tied. And we see loads of substitutes, and it felt like Sporting slightly improved. And the 85th is where Juventus turned on a switch, and that's where they had a big shot on target, but it's still not enough. This is when Jonathan David enters the match, and Kostic off the bench, continue to look for a winner. But it's David who has a header to win it, but it stays out of the net, and that was all she wrote as this one ended 1-1. I kept up with this match for the first 60 minutes, and this match was interesting, and it did not take long until Luis Diaz took advantage of a mistake, and he put it in the net, coming off really good form with Colombia. So Bayern Munich is already up 1-0 just 4 minutes in. PSG, they did show signs of life, but everything just wasn't connecting ultimately. I thought both sides did look good, and then it appeared Dembele ended up scoring halfway into the first half, but VAR takes away the goal. And PSG, they continue to show that they wanted to tie this thing up, but going the other way in the 32nd minute, Diaz now has 2 goals. And after, we see Hakimi try to get a goal back for PSG, and they were pressing. Joshua Kimmich thought he had the 3rd goal, but it's ruled out by VAR. And Harry Kane almost extended it to 3, but later on, we see Luis Diaz with a reckless challenge to Hakimi, and VAR took a look, and that yellow card turned into a red. And the best player on the pitch is now off. And Hakimi, he will leave this match injured, and he's going to miss the remainder of the calendar year. So the Morocco national team wasn't too pleased about this one. But anyways, going to the second half, Bayern Munich, they have to hold strong here, and surely PSG looked better up a man, and shots were attempted on frame. They were flying. Kvaratskhelia ends up having the shot they were looking for, and PSG, they kept pressing. Bettina has a chance, and he had multiple efforts and shots. They're just flying on target, and it's up to Neuer to make these stops. It does not take much longer, because in the 74th minute, Neves has scored, and they look to tie it. Bettina ends up having a chance that doesn't go in, and shots are just continue to go on frame, and Bayern Munich is absolutely holding on to dear life in this match. And you would think the Georgian international or Bettina would have one by now, or another one if you want to call it that, and it's Marquinhos who has the last chance for PSG, but they can't score, and they lose to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich was able to hold on. This match was not great. Bodo Glimt, they looked to have more opportunities early with the ball, but Monaco, they took over, and about 20 minutes in, Bodo Glimt, they put the pressure on, and they have their first chance on goal. And Monaco then turned on the heat, and this match went back and forth, but Monaco looked better off, and this Balogun, the American international, getting the first goal of the match for Monaco. Bodo Glimt, they looked to answer, but they're down 1-0 at the half, and they looked better out of the half, and in the 57th minute, a chance on goal could see this tied 1-1, but it's a save. And they kept pressing, but then Monaco, they got more control of the ball with 15 minutes left, and that control leads to VAR, looking at a foul, and Bodo Glimt, they end up getting a red card, and it appears that crushes their night, because Monaco made sure that the home side wouldn't win this one or had any lifeline or any chances, and they win this one up 1-0 with ease up a man. When you don't take your opponent seriously, these results happen, which is why I did not tune in this one after I saw the starting 11. Villarreal indeed did look better, but this match, it was quiet. And Pafos showed they could hang on to the ball and play well. And it was a lot of slow play, honestly. And Villarreal, they have the first shot on frame just before the half after Pafos looked better offensively. And other than that, it's a quiet half. So it's 0-0. And in the second half, Pafos wasted absolutely no time because they are up 1-0 and Derek Lucassen ends up scoring, who has had a solid campaign so far. Pafos, they looked for two, but their chance is saved. Villarreal woke up, and this is where I put my eyes on this match. And they were dominant, but Pafos showed once again what they can do. And Villarreal, they looked better, and it started going back and forth, and Villarreal kept pressing, but they were just looking for, the right chance. And they kept pushing, but Pafos, they ended up holding strong, and they end up winning 1-0 for the upset, and this is their first ever win in the tournament. These sides have seen each other a few times in UEFA competitions, and it did set up an exciting match. Chelsea had the quality, which it showed, but Qarabag, they had to fight. And in a back and forth match, we see Chelsea score first away from home, and Qarabag, they end up showing lots of pressure, and sure enough, in the 29th minute, Andre ends up scoring, and it's his third of the tournament. And this match continued to go back and forth, and Qarabag's efforts see them draw a PK, and that leads to them getting the lead in the 39th minute. So going to the half, give the advantage for Qarabag. In Chelsea, they were not satisfied, and they made a lot of changes coming to the second half. Qarabag, they pressed hard for a third goal, but the ball's going the other way, and Garnacho has tied it for Chelsea. And Chelsea looks like the best they have all match. And after that goal, it's Enzo Fernandez almost getting them the lead. Qarabag, they end up making adjustments and changes, but Chelsea continued to look better. Qarabag, they had some involvement, but it felt like Chelsea wanted it more. Garnacho almost has the match winner, but it's not in the net, and they kept pressing. But they have to settle for a 2-2 draw. I would say Qarabag continues to shock the world of European football. This was my match I watched in real time, and it felt like a good one, but it wasn't what I hoped for. Manchester City, they were just dominant. They kept offensive pressure. This leads to Phil Foden end up scoring, and Manchester City's up front 1-0. And surely enough, nothing changed, and Erling Haaland ends up scoring to make it 2-0. Nothing still changed. It was 2-0 at halftime. Very disappointing. And out of the half, it appeared Dortmund, they had some life, but that was short-lived. Manchester City took back over, and once again, Phil Foden, he ends up having his second goal, and it's 3-0 Manchester City. And it took over an hour until Dortmund showed they could do something, and they made match changing, and it felt like they were better now. And finally, they get a goal from Anton, and it feels like it's game on. And they were pressing for that second goal, and Manchester City was struggling, so they looked to the bench. So late after the 90, it appeared Manchester City, they woke up, and if Dortmund thought they had an opportunity for a draw, Cherki ends up ending that, and he scores and makes it 4-1, and that was the match. Maybe it's just me, but I am impressed with Newcastle United's run. The first 10 minutes, it looked like all athletic club, but in the 11th minute, Kieran Trippier, he has to assist to Dan Burn, and the home side is up. The La Liga side, they continue to look better, and they have their first shot on frame in the 17th minute, but they're still down. And it started to then go back and forth, and then after the 40th minute, Newcastle United ends up holding on to the lead, and that's how it would be going to the half. And going to the second half, Newcastle United looked much better because it only took about 5 minutes, and Joe Lennon ends up extending the lead. And they kept pressing for a third as Botman ended up having a header that almost went in. And Newcastle United, they continued to show their opportunities. And we saw Athletic Club, they got reckless, and they made substitutes with 20 minutes, and they started to press on. And in the 80th minute, they have a shot on frame, but it ends up getting saved. And they kept pressing for a goal, and in the 90th minute, they have another shot, but it's also saved. And they kept on the press, but they would lose this one 2-0. A hat trick from Victor Osimhen, which has Ajax in shambles, including the firing of the manager. This one should be interesting to hear what our guest has to say about this one.
Galatasaray gets an important win in Amsterdam, smashing Ajax 3-0 in Matchday 4 of the Champions League. After a bit of a tight first half, the Lions came alive in the second. Victor Osimhen broke the deadlock in the 59th minute with a thunderous header from Leroy Sané's pinpoint cross. Then, chaos for Ajax. A handball in the box by Yuri Boss, and Osimhen made no mistake from the spot. But he wasn't done just yet. Another handball inside the area in the 78th, and boom. Osimhen steps up again and completes his hat-trick, thus making him the goal leader with 6 goals in the Champions League this season. Ajax had one lifeline when Mika Götze almost capitalized on a goalkeeper mix-up, but he just couldn't finish that. In the end, it was just more than pure dominance from Galatasaray. The win pushes them up to 9 points in their group, while Ajax stays rock bottom with none. And Osimhen, he makes history, the first foreign player to ever score a Champions League hat-trick for Galatasaray since Burak Yilmaz. What a night for the Lions, and one Ajax will want to forget.
Wow. This match, it had everything. It had controversy. And let's get into this one. So Club Brugge, they started the match off right, and surely enough, in the 6th minute, Trizoldi ends up scoring to make it 1-0 at home. However, Ferran Torres ends up responding with a goal of his own for Barcelona. And this one is tied in a span of 2 minutes. And Barcelona, they didn't look to be better, but once again, they're going down a goal. As Club Brugge, they end up retaking the lead in the 17th minute. And Barcelona end up looking better, but Club Brugge was making their chances worth more. And Barcelona, they look for a goal late into the half, but their shots on target keep them down 2-1 at the half. In Club Brugge, they looked better off, and they had a shot on frame, but it still remains 2-1. And Yamal almost tied it up, but his shot went out for a corner. Barcelona, they started growing to this match again, and we saw changes, and that's when Yamal scored, and Lopez would have his 2nd assist of the match. And Club Brugge continued to press to get that lead back, and sure enough, they do, as Forbes would get his 2nd just over a minute after this match was tied. And Barcelona, once again, they pressed from behind, and you zoom up to the 72nd minute, and that's when VAR checked for Club Brugge PK. Nothing gets rewarded, however. And Barcelona, they know they need the score, and with help from an own goal, they indeed get it from Trizoldi. And Club Brugge, they didn't push for another goal, and towards the end, it was Barcelona fighting to get ahead, but they couldn't, and afterwards, the VAR looked at another potential Club Brugge PK, probably the one that's being talked about the most, but none was given, and there was lots of outrage on the internet, in the stadium, pretty much everywhere, and nothing would happen after that. Both of these sides, they have to settle for a very entertaining 3-3 draw. This match was important for both sides, but it's not a great one. It was back and forth, and in the 12th minute, Rios looks for the first goal for Benfica, but it's not in the net, and they had better chances than Benfica. They started looking better, but their chances at the net just weren't being capitalized. And Benfica, they would have their 2nd shot on target in about half an hour, and another following that a couple minutes later for Otamendi. But this match is deadlocked 0-0 at the half. And out of the half, it looked very similar, but Benfica, they were still the better side here. Bayern Leverkusen, they end up making substitutes, and surely enough, that does the trick as Petr Cech ends up scoring, and Benfica is surprising the one down 1-0 in this match, and this led to changes from the home side, and they pressed on. Benfica in the 90th minute had their chance to tie, but Lubebeco cannot get the goal, and that would do it. And the away side, they end up pulling off the win. Inter Milan had the fight for this one unexpectedly. Inter Milan, they were for sure the better side, as they first corner some chances early on. Toro Martinez ends up having a shot on frame in the 10th minute, but the goalkeeper makes the save, and about 10 minutes later, VR intervened for a potential Inter Milan PK, but nothing comes out of it, and the opportunities came from Martinez, but he just could not score. And Ricardo Mari, they have their first chance trying to be the ones to score first, but they cannot. Inter Milan, they kept pressing, but the away side was slightly more involved, and with about 5 minutes to play, they would have a shot on target, but it's not enough, and they were pressing hard for a goal, but it's going the other way, and Lautaro Martinez has scored to close out the half. And they kept pressing, but in the 55th minute, Ricardo Mari, they end up tying this thing up, and the press continued, but Inter Milan could not get shots on frame, and finally in the 67th minute, Augusto has scored for Inter Milan, and it is 2-1. We see changes for Ricardo Mari to try to fight to get this thing tied, and we continue to see Inter Milan miss chances, but nothing really much else happened, and the home side wins this one, 2-1. Somehow the Volcanoes did not explode in this match, and it was a quiet match, but in the 15th minute, Atalanta, they have a PK, and maybe due to the low tempo, this led to a miss. And Marseille ended up waking up, and Aubameyang, he ended up having the first big chance. And Marseille, they looked better, nothing fantastic though. Atalanta had a close chance, but we're still deadlocked. And Marseille, they looked for a late goal in the half, but it's 0-0 at the half. And out of the half, Atalanta, they end up having the first chance, but Marseille had one as well. And this match did feel more even, but Marseille was better. And over an hour in, they have another chance, but it's out for a corner. Marseille, they become reckless, and that leads to what could have been an Atalanta goal, but VAR says no goal. And Marseille, they continue to look for a goal, but Atalanta had a big chance with 15 minutes to play, but nothing came out of it. And Mason Greenwood, he ends up responding with a shot on frame, and the other way, Atalanta has one of their own. And it kept just going back and forth as Atalanta made late substitutes. Marseille puts mass amount of pressure, but in the 90th minute, the ball is going the other way, and Atalanta's the one that ultimately scores. And Marseille, they press hard for a goal back, and they were firing shots, they were forcing corners, and it appeared Marseille may have won a PK. VAR takes a look, they say no. They continue the press, but Atalanta, they managed to hold on, and they still win in France. All right, we're going to take a look at the table now. Honestly, I think the top 8's painting out pretty well. I would say the biggest surprise we have is Newcastle United. Honestly, I'm not going to twist it. I think that's probably our biggest surprise. And then looking at 9th through 24th, Galatasaray, they've won their last 3, so they're hanging right there in 9th. So the Turkish Giants are just having a solid tournament after a bad first match. Other than that, you still see Qarabag holding on there. They are in 15th. PSV, they're hanging in there too, around 18th. And that big win for Pafos, they are 20th. So that's pretty massive for them. And then if we look onto the outside, we have clubs like Marseille, Juventus, Atletico, Villarreal, Benfica, and Ajax. They are way down here for the standards, honestly. So those are some surprises, but we'll see how, the next 4 matches play out. And like I said, some clubs have harder schedules than others. Now we're going to do our typical comparing and contrasting. So actually, I did say that things got messed up here, but some of that's a lie, because if we look at how I did when it came to 1st through 8th, we're now up to 75%. So we have definitely upped that up, but this is where the other numbers start to drop, even though they're not big drops. So for 9th through 24th, we're 50%, so not bad. It's 25th through 36th, we're a little off, we're about 42%. And then accuracy on position, though, we did get that up to around 6%, so that is a good thing. Some miss barely, it happens. And then looking at the match accuracy and the final result, didn't happen this time. And I did not do very good on match accuracy on the win-loss draw, because we have a pretty much, we'll call it a tournament low of 28%. So hopefully match day 5, things look better. All right, now we're going to look at our team of the week. And believe it or not, UEFA has picked a different formation for this edition of Team of the Week, which features a 3-4-1-2, which I did not so much expect. Anyways, I don't want to waste too much time, so let's look at our 11 players that were selected by UEFA and not me. The goalkeeper matchday 4 ends up being Manuel Neuer, who ends up helping his team down a man in the second half for Bayern Munich against PSG, making a total of 9 saves, which was enough for a 2-1 win. At left back, Carlos Augusto makes it in representing Inter Milan after scoring the match winner for them against Kairat in the 67th minute. At center back, the German international Robin Koch is the one who helped Eintracht Frankfurt sustain a clean sheet against Napoli with 2 blocked shots, 13 clearances, an interception, and a 100% rate when it came to tackles and ground duels in a scoreless draw. Out at right back, Drew Leverkusen ends up breaking back into the Team of the Week after scoring the match winner at home for Pafos against Villarreal out of the half in the 46th minute. And looking up to the midfield on the left, David Zappacosta ends up making it after being part of Atalanta's 1-0 win with 92% pass accuracy and going 89% in the opposition's half while being 3 for 4 on long balls, which is 75%. In the center midfield on the left, Alexis McAllister ends up scoring the lone goal and match winner for Liverpool against Real Madrid in the 61st minute. Alongside him on the right, the 19-year-old Ibrahim Maza from Algeria went 91% on his pack accuracy, including being 88 in the opposition's half, and he had one big chance created in a 1-0 win for Bayern Leverkusen. At right midfield, Carlos Forbes had an amazing night against Barcelona in a 3-3 draw with Club Rouge, assisting on the first goal and scoring the next 2 goals. Out in the attacking midfield, Phil Foden scores 2 goals for Manchester City in a 4-1 win, including the opener and go-ahead goal. Up to the 2 forwards, beginning on the left, Mikel Merino represents Arsenal after scoring 2 goals, including the go-ahead goal on the road in a 3-0 win away in Prague. And out on the right is Victor Osimhen for Galatasaray, who scores a hat-trick against Ajax in Amsterdam, including 2 PKs, and ultimately all the goals for the Turkish side, winning 3-0. Alright, so that will do it, and after the last men's international window, Matchday 5 will be here before you know it, and I believe before the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw. And it's an exciting time ahead, and especially for me, as I believe we will be seeing the return of Alphonso Davies pretty soon, and we'll see how he looks. And with that being said, I'm not going to say much more. Thanks for watching, everyone, and enjoy your days, and I look forward to seeing all of you again very soon. Take care, y'all.